Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, the season finale of Black Lightning, as well as the latest episode of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I had to say about the season finale of Black Lightning and/or what I had to say about the latest episode, this week's episode of Legion. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. A great and very powerful episode of The Flash. Obviously, it's kind of like the final steps and kind of like learning more about the hero, like that question that comes up when it comes to the hero situation of whether or not you kill your villains or not. Well, in this particular case, like, Barry's saying like, no, because we have these powers and everything, we don't have to go down that route. We don't have to like kill our main entity. Like, we don't have to kill our enemies. That's not the hero route, because Ralph is just kind of like, oh, we could just take them out. And wouldn't that just be the simplest thing to do? And it's just because it's like, I'm surprised Barry never brought it up as an example, but always like, because that's something like Barry has struggled with himself on many different occasions, wanting to, like, he knows what it's like to want to end your antagonist. Like, Reverse Flash killed his mom. Zoom killed his dad. Savitar was going to kill Iris, but ended up killing HR. But it's still that situation of like, you feel so tempted to, but the thing is, I also surprised he didn't bring up was an example of Oliver. Oliver has done that, and it has changed him. And it's like he struggles with that all the time. That's something Iris has brought up to Barry in the past too. And the fact is, Iris herself has crossed that line. She's the one that ended up killing Savitar. And she even talked about it. The fact is that eventually, she's like, right now, at that time, it wasn't affecting her, but eventually she knew at some point in time it would kind of eventually get to her at some point in time, which we haven't really seen yet. So I'm interested to see if that's still going to be something they plan on doing with Iris, like the ramifications of doing what she did. So, because obviously this is all a race for the final bus meta. His name is Edwin. Apparently his ability is to fold dimensions, much like what DeVoe can do with his chair. But interestingly enough, it seems like Edwin, his power is actually stronger than what the chair is capable of, because the chair can only go to one dimension, that one little pocket dimension. But Edwin can actually pop into also DeVoe's pocket dimension as well. So that's what kind of shows you, like, if you push yourself, like, shows that his ability is that much stronger. And obviously Ralph wanted to use him to go, oh, we'll sneak in and we'll kill DeVoe, especially with this new device that the Sonic Scepter that Harry had built. So, but Barry stopped him. Because ultimately Barry was like, I know you're scared and everything, but for Ralph, it's like, no, I'm not scared. You're an idiot. I'm trying to do what I can to protect you guys, because you guys are like the closest thing I have to family. Like, other than my mom, you guys are the only family I have. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to protect them, because he knows that DeVoe will do whatever it takes to get to them. And especially after seeing Caitlin get hurt in this episode, because at the beginning, Ralph in the beginning would have been all about, before he was scared about himself, but this time it's like, no, like, I don't want the people I care about to get hurt by this bad guy. So if I kill him, I don't ever have to worry about him hurting any of you. But even Barry was like, I understand that, and it's sweet that you think like that, but it's like, we don't want you. This is also our choice too, because we don't want to lose you. The Ralph that's in front of us, the hero that you become, if you kill DeVoe, you compromise that. And we love this Ralph, and we don't, because like, you undo all the good that you've done, becoming this better person. But for Ralph, it's like, I will do whatever. I will turn back into the piece of crap me if it means saving all of you guys, And it's just that like little sweet moment. But sadly, everything was, being who he is, DeVoe was always one step ahead. And because of that, like, he got the other metas. And then it seemed like, Ralph had him, but he ends up taking Ralph. And it's just like Barry's stuck and can't get to Ralph. But he's like, I promise I'll save you. And then Ralph's final line is, you already did, Barry. And I'm like, that broke my heart, dude. I didn't expect that. Like, legitimately, I thought Ralph was going to like somehow, like, he would have found a way around this, but I did not expect him to get Ralph too. That shocked me. Like, I thought, like, okay, it's always going to be a threat, but I didn't actually expect him to get Ralph. It's like, that's crazy. I mean, especially with this current circumstances, because it doesn't seem like there's any fixing this. Like, the fact of the matter is, they're they're gone and there's no erasing that. And like Barry can't do something like go back in time. Like he could, but you know, he already learned his lesson. He has no attention, like any intentions of doing any time traveling anymore, because that's just going to cause more problems. It's just sad because you know that's probably because the sad thing is when it's all said and done, Barry blames himself. Most likely, he's going to blame himself because, and it's sad because like there's just more and more people Barry has lost over the years. You know, first it was obviously his mom, then he lost Eddie, then he lost his dad, he lost HR, and now he's lost Ralph, like a good friend, you know, buddy, and everything. And it's just like it's not fair, you know. He doesn't say it, but I immediately in my brain, I'm like, Ralph could have taken him out when he had the chance, but because Ralph was trying to be the hero that Barry was telling him to be, he ended up, you know, just arresting DeVoe instead of killing him. And it's like, maybe, you know, probably it could be somewhere floating in Barry's mind that maybe that's not the, you know, it might make even Barry question whether this is the right thing to do or not. I don't know. Maybe it won't, but it might be enough to push Barry to go like, nah. We need DeVoe's too dangerous to be left alone now that he has all 12 Meta's abilities. It's like we have to. I don't know. I don't think so, but I think that's still something that's probably going to rattle around in his brain a lot more than it would have before, you know? Like I said, it's just so sad. And just to see, like, even Cisco, like, pushing his powers to the limit to the point he's starting to bleed out of his ears because of them kind of coming back through the pocket dimension. It kind of messed up his ability. Also for Caitlin, it seems like she lost Killer Frost because Melting Point's abilities kind of like connected all the dark matter in her system, which, I mean, it could be reconnected, like if the situation came about it, but for now it seems like she lost Killer Frost, which for the longest time, like all of season 3, all she ever wanted to do was get rid of those abilities, but now it's like she likes Killer Frost. Like they even left notes for each other. It's even that conversation she had with Iris, it's like, yeah, she's kind of got her own humor. It takes a little bit to get used to, but leaving sticky notes for me, like they actually grew closer. And for her, it's like she probably because it's not just like another side of herself. She like Killer Frost was kind of her own person, but for Caitlin too, it probably does feel like losing a part of yourself. And you see the look on her face, like, wow, that, you know, losing that, and it's just like it's just lost on every angle of this situation. Iris wants to be there for Barry, but Barry's just kind of like, I need to be alone. He's cleaning up and out Ralph's office, you know, and it's just kind of like, dude, that sucks. Because all this while, like, you know, Harry, like a big thing for Harry this episode was the fact is that he became more and more dependent on the Cap, and obviously Joe, being the good detective he is like, yeah, something just doesn't seem right here. And amongst anyone, he figured it out first. He knew something wasn't quite right, and the way Harry was kind of talking about it, almost like he never took it off, especially because Cisco commented on it, almost like he never takes it off, because he didn't, because he started getting more and more addicted to it. Because even though he never admitted it to anyone, he was dumping dark matter into the thinking Cap too, just enough to kind of push himself over the edge when it comes to his smarts and stuff like that. But it did kind of make him seem almost like a drug addict, because the moment like it went missing, he's like, where is this? Let's go, where is it? Give me my thinking Cap back. I know you took it from me. I know you did. Like he lost it. He did, because I was wondering what was going to happen to him at the end of the episode, because it seemed like basically he had Gideon go full blast with the dark matter, which, because I was, you know, I feel like that was always going to be the concern, like what ultimately happens to him. I thought like, oh man, this is going to like make him go super villainish like the Thinker, or just, you know, do something else to him. At the very least, I'm curious, because at the end, it seems like he's okay. He seems like he's kind of spaced out of it a little bit, but now it kind of makes a little more sense, because DeVoe has all that dark matter that he was gathering up and trying to put inside of his brain. Like DeVoe saw and knew that, you know, because of Harry's willingness and his need to try and outdo DeVoe, there's probably a small chance that Harry wouldn't do it, but because of the current situation, obviously the dire straits, he needed to do it, and it's just... So I don't know, like, whether Harry's, like, returned 100% to normal, because I expected him to kind of be knocked out, but I guess it's, like, all that shock and stuff he received was, like, at the same time, it was kind of being siphoned to him, it was kind of being siphoned off by DeVoe. It's just sad that, like, everything played out like this, because it's not even just Ralph. I mean, all the 4 metas that they had, well, the 3 metas that they had that they were keeping safe, well, locked up, are dead now too. And like I said, I don't know if there's a way to fix that. Like, is there any coming back from this? Like, I would hope someone thinks so on some shape and form. Like, you got to make that possible, but I don't know. This whole situation with these 12 metas, that might be permadeath for all we know, you know? And that's just such a shame, dude. Think like I mean, seriously, it's like Ralph got introduced this season. He's a new member of the team and everything, new hero, and it's like he's gone, and that's just it feels so unreal. And you have DeVoe basically using Ralph's shapeshifting ability to make himself look like himself again, and it's just like, ugh. I mean, he has the abilities of 12 metas, and it's like, how do you fight that? Especially because with the way Ralph's body is, it doesn't like he has the perfect host now to hold his body for his ever growing brain. Now, something I brought up before, and my thought process has always been this, that ultimately everything he's doing is also leading up to him being able to be strong enough to take over Barry's body. It's kind of always been my thought process. But now that he has these 12, I don't know, like now that he has Ralph's body, because I feel like Barry's body would be good because of the whole Flash, because of him being a speedster. His mind can like compensate, because obviously he can read like a crap ton in a small amount of time. So his brain can absorb a lot of information very quickly. So I feel like a speedster's mind may be good for his mind as well. So that's always been my thought process. Maybe it hasn't crossed his mind to do that, or maybe it is one of the end results, because it is seeming that him and Marlies are heading into the final arc of their plan, essentially. That dark matter is basically inadvertently, Harry ended up fueling, giving them a piece of what they needed to kind of make things happen with all that dark matter. You have Iris being injured because, like, when she was fighting Marlies, she pulled the blade closer just to get Marlies closer and just to kind of be able to attack, which I guess that speaks volumes too, like, about what, you know, she's willing to do. You know, she was, you know, to make sure that Marlies was stopped and just to kind of get Killer Frost, Cisco, and Barry back from DeVoe's dimension. So powerful episode with just the factors of everything that's kind of going down. And it's just, I always comment on this, especially like I said, this season has not looked that good for Barry or Oliver. They're both kind of down in the dumps with their current situations each. So it just kind of sucks that this is where we are. I'm curious to see what happens now. I mean, like I said, he's got the abilities of 12 metas, and how will Barry be able to counteract that? Like, you know, Team Flash is down not just one, but two, potentially. Maybe even three, depending on Cisco's condition. Like, that might be something we see in this too. Like, in this fight, Cisco might end up like, I mean, because the fact that it matters with Melting Point's ability, he could legitimately dissolve, like, all of their abilities if he needed to. But also the fact is that, like, you know, they're down to just Cisco and Barry being potentially the only ones fighting. Okay, I was kind of blanking on the point I was trying to make. Because the fact is, if Cisco, it might be a point where Cisco ends up pushing his abilities too much. As we know, like, they can kind of burn out their abilities with age, but also if they push it, I mean, that's with anyone's abilities. Like, Barry's done that too, so. At this point in time, it almost seems like DeVoe is unstoppable, and I'm curious to see what can they do to fight him with all these abilities that he has underneath his belt. I mean, the fact of the matter is, hurting him is going to be pretty hard too. Not even just with all the abilities he has. Let's not forget, he also has Ralph's body, and Ralph's body has been trained by Barry to kind of be able to, you know, to be a hero, and now that all that training is being used against him to make Ralph the perfect host body for a villain. Because, like, nothing is going to work on him naturally just because of just his rubber body. So how do you take him down? Like, we still haven't circled back to it, but it has to do something with all that stuff that was in Barry's head when he came out of the Speed Force. Like, the Speed Force might be the only... I don't know whether Barry's going to have to talk to the Speed Force, or whether he's just going to have to, like, they end up deciphering what's there. I mean, I don't know how they're going to decipher that either, because, like, Harry doesn't have the helmet anymore. I mean, it might not be possible to kind of channel anything into it anymore. It might be completely broken after what Surge trying to surge all of it in this particular episode. So I don't know. We will just have to wait and see what Team Flash has in store in the next episode. And also find out what exactly this whole enlightenment situation is going to be all about. Because we're still kind of in the dark about what that all entails exactly, so... And now moving on to the season finale of Black Lightning. So a lot of stuff was kind of learned about in this episode. For one, we learned more about Lala's situation, which is interesting. Like, obviously, like, you have Tobias being like, "Oh, I killed you so I can bring you back through resurrect." Like, basically, it was some resurrection stuff that brought him back. But the way he talked about it, it seemed like it was more science fictional, because everything so far has been very science fictional. But everything associated with like his whole thing, it seems more like it seems very like magic / supernatural esque. So I'm wondering, is that what they're setting like Lala's whole thing up to be? The fact is, like, because it turns out the whole like tattoo things is kind of what I kind of got it partially right. It isn't just necessarily all the innocent people he killed. It is just people in general he's killed. That it's just started with Will and LaWanda, because they were, I guess, the most recent victims, and I guess biggest impacted. I don't know, just the most recent ghosts to haunt him. That eventually the ghosts will keep popping up until they cover his entire body, naming him Tattoo Man, which I don't know whether that's supposed to be a reference to like an actual character in the DC universe, but nevertheless, that was just kind of interesting. He supposedly is quote unquote dead, because he had the bomb in him and exploded, but I doubt he's dead. It's probably most likely like after given enough amount of time, he'll just come back. We didn't see him after that for the rest of the episodes. I can only assume it's like he comes back like there is no permadeath for him anymore, potentially. So, I mean, he took a supercharged punch from Tobias and got up like it was nothing. So, I think that speaks volumes all on its own. It was kind of interesting to hear Gambi kind of break down some of the things, kind of explaining like the difference between like Tobias and his group with what like is Jeff and his family. I like he kind of like what happened to Jeff and them is more like an organic with the metas, like their abilities kind of come from within the whole situation. Whereas Tobias, like this is the first time they've really brought it up as like more of a medicine. Like they really haven't explained where that comes from, like what that's all about, like what that stems from. We did learn that cyanide situation is the fact is, I was wondering what that was underneath her skin last episode. It turns out that that's like armor. Like, God, what was the exact wording? Carbon fiber armor was put underneath her skin by none other than Tobias. But we kind of understand why she's so indebted to him, because she was kind of left in a dumpster, and then she grew up in an orphanage, but she wasn't really I think a foster family, but she wasn't really taken care of, but Tobias brought her in, so that's why she's got so much loyalty. She'll do anything for him. And we also learned that whole thing about Khalil, the stuff he shoots out is actually from his own body. Like, that paralytic agent is from himself. They just gave him a more projectile way of, shooting it out. They're calling, Tobias calls him painkiller, so that's interesting. I thought that was just kind of a mechanism. It's like, no, that's kind of built from him. And it does seem like we are seeing it in this episode. Like, Khalil seemed like he had his reservations last episode, but it does seem like he's kind of stepping more into, because it is something that Gambi kind of points out. It's like, this isn't the same Khalil this is like a different Khalil, because Tobias kind of sees something within people, and he pulled at the darkness that was already there in Khalil. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe it just took the right circumstances to bring forth. I mean, that whole conversation, everyone's got a little bit of darkness in them, so. But a big part of this episode was about Jeff. Obviously, he was kind of in a in-between state. Obviously, we've seen flashbacks to his dad. It's in particular when Gambi was trying to warn him not to go as far as he did. Also, little moments between Jeff and his dad. I guess it's obviously setting up the fact is that the lessons that his dad kind of instilled in him, that basically those lessons are what made him the way he is now, made him into Black Lightning, helped forge him into becoming the man that he wants to be to save Freeland, And because it was kind of an interesting conversation with his dad, because for him, it's like, I became Black Lightning, but I beget more violence with more violence. But even like his dad was like, well, not all peace is, brought about peacefully. The fact of the matter, because he's like, after all I've done, like, has it all been worth it, is what Jeff asked. And his dad is like, honestly, I don't know. Like, the only person that can answer that is you. When it's all said and done, you have to be the one that has to look back and ultimately decide whether it was all worth it to become Black Lightning. Ultimately, I think it is. It is kind of interesting to kind of learn more about Jeff's past in this episode too, because Gambi explains that Jeff experienced powers pretty early on, but they didn't fully manifest himself until 15 years later. So it wasn't until much later that his powers manifested themselves like that, which I think is kind of interesting. But I thought it was pretty nifty, because obviously you had like Jeff finally waking up, but he did have his powers. And then, he was still willing to try and act like a distraction so he could make sure his family gets away, even if he didn't have his powers. But like Jen, I guess figuring like, being heightened by her emotions, figured she knew what to do. She's like, she brought her dad back with his heart. So maybe she can do the same thing with his powers. So she charges up, grabs him, and essentially supercharges him. So kicking his powers back into overdrive. So together, him and Nissa Thunder kick the ASA's ass as they approach. I like that. I was kind of halfway expecting it, but it didn't turn out the way I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be like a full-on convergence on that. Yeah, and I thought like the ASA was going to be there, Tobias and his crew, along with the police and everything. But the ASA kind of had to back out. Well, I say ASA, but really it's not the ASA. It's as like as Gamby kind of points it out, because it's like the way. I thought like, he handled the entire ASA is what Proctor's whole thing is. Like I said, he might be like some middle to maybe high ranking official within the organization, but he doesn't run everything. Because even Gamby's like, yeah, you don't have the ASA's full backing. You got people here and there that follow your command. This is, like I said, a rogue operation. I figured from the beginning just the way he was acting, it's like, yeah, this is like some secret like government stuff that like not everyone in the government knows about. Like this is some super off the book records type of thing. So it turns out it is the case, even further off the books than I thought, because it's like the ASA doesn't, in it as an entity all on its own, had no idea what he was up to. Interestingly enough, we never actually got to see the vice principal this episode. Interestingly enough, I was kind of shocked to find out that Jeff did not find out her true identity, like that she was actually part of that. I mean, maybe that's something we'll kind of see in the future, but I was also quite shocked to see, like, the fact is that Proctor ends up dead. Because I was surprised that like Jeff didn't try and stop Gamby from doing it. But I guess it's that situation. Well, Gamby's the one that did, because for him it's like, I'm already a monster, so what's one more like thing against my soul? It's like, as long as they weren't the ones that had to do it. I did appreciate seeing it being pretty badass that Jennifer like lifted him up, like did a black lightning move and slammed it back down. You see Anissa and Gamby like, whoa, but Jeff's kind of like, calm down, Jennifer. I will admit, it does seem like a lot of this season finale was hugely left open-ended, because we don't really know what it is that, Tobias ended up getting at the end of the episode after he got that suitcase from Proctor. I would assume it's like more green light, maybe a kind of something he could use to kind of like, maybe it's green light in its purest form, and maybe if he uses it, it'll like expand upon the stuff that, Tobias already uses. Or, I'm curious to see, like, maybe he can, amass his own army of, like, metahumans type of thing. That could be, because he is talking about running Freeland and whatnot, and the best way to run that is, I mean, he kind of runs the 100 now, so I guess that could be something we kind of see going forward, as like him supercharging them with green light, but like maybe in a more concentrated form, and he gets to dictate who gets in and whatnot. So might be kind of creating his own type of supervillains, kind of similar to Smallville, how it's like the meteorites gave different people abilities. Maybe have something kind of like that. But also, we were very left open-ended with the whole people that were held captured too, because it's like, it seems like Lynn, she said, I know someone I can talk to. Is like, who exactly, we don't know. But they kind of just leave it at that. So, because the interesting thing is, it was like, they needed like Jeff's DNA. They needed the DNA of a perfect like metahuman under these circumstances to stabilize them, because they were all reaching it. Like I said, it's just kind of like hard cut, and we're not dealing with that. So it's just kind of interesting. I guess it's going to be a situation that, potentially in the future we can kind of have resolved a little bit. But it does seem like the truth comes out. Under what circumstances, we don't know, like whether it's like, oh, the others were helped and they were brought back and they explained their story, or Black Lightning broke the story, or, they helped the cops find this. We don't know. Like like I said, a lot was left open with this finale. It didn't go the way I thought it would. I thought it'd just be like a final showdown between Black Lightning and Tobias. It's like, no, it just kind of, I mean, at the time of me recording this, I don't know if this is being brought back for a second season. I really hope it is. I'm very interested to see what they do with it. Like I said, it just seems like it was kind of like cut short, So I guess that's kind of like, I don't know. I guess because like the next season's supposed to be kind of like part 2 to this season, rather than just because like, I don't know. I guess it kind of feels like it is just part 1 of the story, whereas like season 2 might be kind of, if there is one, would be more like a part 2 to this season. You get what I'm trying to say? It's just, I guess I would assume like, storyline wise, because I feel like, this is all still kind of like the Tobias arc essentially. So, ultimately we'd have to, wait and see. And I'd be curious to see, because it does seem like, especially when we hear the ending, it sounds like Jennifer's like, oh, we're kind of stepping up. Like, this is our responsibility. This is what we're going to do. So potentially we could see her stepping more into the fray next season. I don't know. I mean, especially curious to see what happens, because I was halfway expecting her and Khalil to kind of clash again. I mean, not clash again, but meet each other this episode, and then like him seeing that Jennifer has power. So, I mean, that's kind of one main reason why Proctor had to be taken out, because he knew their identities. It's like, oh, like he would have just kept coming back if they hadn't taken care of him. But to be fair, who's to say someone much worse than Proctor? I mean, who's to say he's just one of a kind in the ASA? I mean, to be fair, a lot of them were killed by Tobias. Well, not killed. I mean, a lot of them were knocked out by Khalil, but I mean, who's to say Tobias didn't go back and kill them later on? But still, I'd definitely be very interested to also see where like their family dynamic, because it's like, obviously this season has been kind of like, obviously Lynn having to come to the terms with like, oh, what, Jeff has decided to do. But at the same time, is also the situation of like finding out about her children being the same way, but it seems like she is okay with it. But obviously they're going to be continuing down this path. I'm also curious to see what this means going forward with Henderson kind of taking the charge with the police, and what that means between him and his relationship with Black Lightning and Thunder and that whole situation. Because obviously things have kind of turned around in the public's eye when it comes to Black Lightning. It's like, yo, Black Lightning's a hero. He's the one that exposed all of this. Obviously, there's a lot of questions, like Henderson said, that need to be answered, that the government, is going to have to answer for. So, I don't know. Like I said, I'd be very interested to see what they do with the second season. Like, especially, like I said, with the whole Lala situation. It seemed more on a supernatural, maybe fantasy side of things. What happened to him, especially like the whole like tattoo things. That's like, that doesn't seem like something you just get by natural science. I know that's like, wait, what, really? But because it's science fiction and stuff like that. But that still seems like that's more of a mystical side of things. So I don't know. Maybe that'd be something we kind of tackle more in like a second season, would be kind of tackling that, because no other show has really tackled that as much. Like, only one so far is Supergirl has done it a little bit. The Flash hasn't touched the more magical side of things at all. Arrow has for a good chunk, and Legends has, but that's about it. Like, we haven't really stepped. Like, I think out of anything, probably Legends has done it the most, steeped in the more like mystical side of things. So I'd be curious to see if they would be willing to do the same thing in Black Lightning or not, or would it just continue down the science fictional route? And what, like I said, once again, what about all those other humans, those other people in Freeland who were turned into metas? Like, did they stay metas? Were they completely cured? I mean, there is no cure for meta. I mean, if Lynn could help understand what happened to Jeff's DNA, maybe she could find a way to make those who want to be humans could be, humans again. I didn't even think about this comparison until just now, but it's like, oh yeah, this whole green light outbreak is kind of similar to the particle accelerator, obviously on a much smaller scale and kind of in a more fucked up way, but still, it was just kind of one greedy person trying to do something. Like, you had Eobard doing that, and obviously you had Proctor and the ASA doing what they did here. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of think about. So, like I said, we'll just kind of have to wait and see whether this gets renewed for a second season and what a second season would entail for us. Also, I do want to note, I really like the musical choices they made for some of like the scenes in this episode. I thought it was kind of pretty nice. Like, obviously during the fight, and also when the police were showing up just as they were leaving for the cabin, I thought that was kind of a nice touch. So. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legion, a crazy episode with a lot of interesting things in it. For one, it does seem like with the whole like little delusions, little slime black things, as I'm guessing those are actually like the literal physical manifestation of the catalyst disease, I guess. I never took that. I thought that was kind of like this whole thing. I thought that was kind of like something else, but it seems like that's what it was, and we saw it kind of hit Potomac in this episode. Potonomy, but I keep saying Potomac, like it is Potonomy, but I'm just going to constantly do that. That's just my weird thing. Nevertheless, before I kind of get too deep into like the whole disease thing, this episode, what we found out, I want to first talk about the whole like interesting situation where we kind of basically saw the moment Farouk lost to David's dad. And it's just kind of interesting. Like, you see him in his shades, you see the reflection of like the chalkboard drawing David did last season, and all of a sudden you see him pass out. I'm like, wow, it's so weird, because let's not forget that was like a fight on like the astral plane or whatever, like, battle between psychics, and it's just kind of interesting to think like, yeah, just from the outside you just see him, bam, that's how he lost. He just passed out. And we kind of saw the whole process of like his body being taken away and everything. But nevertheless, we saw David meet up with Farouk later on in his mind, which the first person he came across was Lenny. And it's sad, actually, because Lenny, it's actually kind of interesting because I guess for the first time subsequently since all of this, since she died in Clockworks, this is like his first time actually really talking to Lenny, which is kind of interesting. And Lenny is legitimately going a little crazy because, you know, he won't let her go. Like, obviously, he kind of brought all that stuff up last episode, like, oh, where are you going to go? You have nothing. Like, but with me, you know, it's like, and she kind of says it herself, it's like, I'm more like a pet or maybe a plant. She talks about the fact that she tore out so much of her own hair, but then, like, the next day it came back. She's asking for drugs. She's, like, legitimately going crazy. And it's like, holy, yeah, she feels a little bad for Lenny. And she's kind of like, yo, do you have any, like, you know, pills or anything? And maybe even glue. Then starts asking, oh yeah, what about that girlfriend of yours, Sid, or the old lady, referencing Melanie, and then also asking about Potomac. It's like, oh, how are your friends doing? I guess she was trying to get his, like, oh yeah, I care about you, David. I care about the people in your life, David. Because she's like, hook me up. You need to find me a way out of here, which David didn't, which is kind of dickish. But I guess maybe in his mind he kind of holds issues with Lenny just because he feels like, once again, it comes out to that situation. If it seemed like it was him wearing Lenny's face, but maybe it's more like Lenny was pushed to the forefront, like he was being the puppeteer, like whispering in her ear, do this and do that. So maybe that's kind of his big reason of like, you kind of deserve to be here because you spent so much time messing with me. You're supposed to be my friend, but you were messing and manipulating with me. So there's that. So maybe that's what it was. Because I was like, oh, he didn't bother even asking. And it was so super messed up as you see her in the background of them talking and stuff like that, trying to kill herself. Like first she's trying to hang herself. And then she takes a gun and then like aesthetically it shows like when the trigger gets pulled, bubbles, like a couple bubbles pop out the other side of her head. It's like, yeah, he's not letting her go. I was actually kind of halfway expecting like David to kind of like, you know, mentally bring up some pills or something for her, because even she kind of stuck in the state. She's like, I don't know, like, oh, me pulling out my hair, was that real? Was that all a dream? I don't know. And it's like, holy crap, Lenny's a mess. To be fair, being kind of caught within someone's mind like that, not even your own mind, your mind being trapped in someone else's, kind of not being able to be yourself and stuff. It's like, oh, it's been fun, I like to go now, but it's like now you're kind of held prisoner. It's kind of like, But it led to some interesting conversations with Farouk, because basically he talks about the fact is that David's calling him a villain. It's like, going to the root word of villains and stuff like that. It's like, I'm not a bad guy. I was a king. I was a strong but fair king. And what happened? Your dad showed up and was kind of like, oh yeah, Farouk, he's not doing things the right way. He's like, my people prospered, you know. And what did your dad do? He came in, some white man came in and start strutting his like stuff around, being like, oh, telling people like it's basically like, who was your dad to come in and mess with my situation? He didn't know what was going on. And that is a question I feel like we still never, and I never thought about it. We don't know exactly what it was that prompted the fight between them. Was Farouk being like a tyrant, a dictator or whatever when it came to this whole situation? Because even in season 1, they never really explained why. I mean, he's kind of like, oh my God, Farouk, oh God, this and that. But it's like, they never really explained what the hell he did that kind of gained so much fear. You know, for Melanie and Carrie to even know who he was, which is kind of interesting. Because it's like, that was never explained, like how they knew. I mean, I guess in the mutant world, he has a reputation, but for what? Like, was he legitimately a monster? Was he kind of a bad guy? He likes to think he's not, but I mean, that's a bad guy for you. Typically, bad guys don't always think, oh, I'm the bad guy. It's like, no, I'm just me. This whole, like, you know, for some people, it's like, oh, this antiquated system of good and bad. I was just me. I was doing my own thing, and then your dad had to step up and cause all these problems. So he also put things in a different perspective for David, which I thought was kind of interesting. He basically made David realize, you do know that by her telling you to change the future, future Sid is telling you she's basically asking you to help her kill herself, which is like, oh, but it's kind of like you do have to think about that, which I guess when the whole time travel thing, I guess, well, with the whole concept of time and everything, David never really thought about it. Because the Sid that he's thinking, because it's so weird, because even he kind of feels conflicted about it, because it's like, well, there's Sid from this time and then there's Sid from the future, but I mean, actually they're the same person, aren't they? So it's not so weird, because he's like, I have 2 girlfriends. No, I have 1 girlfriend, but they're the same person, so are they? You know, it's such an interesting thing. But inadvertently, he would end up killing the Sid from the future, because that timeline would no longer exist if things kind of played out differently. So He also brought up another interesting tidbit of information, and that is the fact is that this catalyst disease is not actually his doing. It's like your Division 3 thinks it's me because they're actually the people you're working with are not that smart. It's not me. It's actually the monk. So because I didn't even correlate that. Like I thought the monk had just snuck in there at the end of that last episode. I was like, oh, he's just popping in there. Like, okay. It's like, no, he actually the one was behind this. Like I guess the monk was there the entire time amongst the group, blending in. I guess. Well, because it seems like everything he was doing was for the purposes of getting I guess it also makes sense too, because in retrospect, it's like everywhere the disease happened, the monk was too, because like it happened at that club where they found David. Well, that's where Oliver / Farouk was, but that's also where the monk was from David's memory. So they never really explained why that was his thing, why he was doing that. I'm wondering, was that part of his was he a mutant or something? Was that kind of his ability, or what was it like? Because we learn more about the monk situation. Basically, they were kind of all driven a little crazy because Farouk, even in his state, Farouk's body wasn't completely dead. The fact of the matter, his body, I guess, was on autopilot mode. Maybe it was kind of like still searching, trying to break free to find his mind. You know, maybe he still had some sway over his body. Like, it's kind of like a phantom limb situation, except in this case, like a phantom body situation that his body was trying to fight its way out, maybe. And basically, the noise kept going on and on and on until it started driving all the monks crazy. You had some kill themselves, just others just kind of just snapping. And then eventually, I guess it all kind of maybe either activated the monks' mutant abilities or whatever his situation is. I guess the craziness drove him crazy, and that ended up creating this virus disease, this like psychic disease that he admits. So I chalk that up to like some mutant ability, but maybe not. I don't know. Mutant abilities take on many different shapes and forms, so I mean, I have no idea. But it seemed like the reason why he broke in there because he was trying to find a weapon to destroy Farouk's body, because basically when the body was handed over to the monks, no one told him that the body would be the problem that it is, because it's like you can't destroy it. Like whatever Farouk's situation is, I mean, apparently he's very old, because we've kind of talked about that before, like. At the very earliest, I think some earliest talks about him was in the 1800s in Morocco, I think specifically. But the fact of the matter is, like, he can't be easily killed. So I don't know whether that's just because, like, he naturally had this protection against his body because the moment his mind left, or what. You would think David's dad would have kind of given a little more leeway, but maybe it wasn't him. Like, who was it specifically that gave the body to the monks? I mean, it seemed like it would be David's dad. I mean, he was the one that did the whole fighting. Once again, also, as I was bringing up earlier, like, why was he fighting Farouk in the first place? Like, what exactly did Farouk do? Nevertheless. But it seemed like the monk was going to Division 3 because he was trying to find a weapon to kill Farouk. And the only means to do that, the only weapon that seems available is David. Because even because Fukuyama had to be like, yeah, we were trying to get a weapon, which is kind of interesting. It's like, yeah, we were trying to make a weapon to destroy his body, but then other things came up, so we kind of forgot it. It's like, he seems like such a big threat, and you're like, he's in the state he's in. I guess they felt like they didn't have to worry about it anymore, which I guess is kind of like egg on their face now, because now it's turning into a situation of like, well, he returned and everything. I mean, he went dormant for so long inside of David and everything. So I guess when it's all said and done, Fukuyama is okay after all of that situation. But nevertheless, what I really appreciate about this episode was the different like minds that David went into. Well, a lot of things. For one, the Carrie situation. I love that because, you know, Carrie's trying to teach the other Carrie, like, well, she's not in his body anymore. So it's kind of like, well, you got to be a little more independent. So the boring stuff that you kind of left up to me, you kind of have to do it now, because the way she would live is through Carrie. And like I said, they didn't answer it, but there's still that whole aspect of, because she never aged because she was always in Carrie's body. So that stopped her aging. So I guess that's what that gray hair was. Like I said, it was either hitting her all at once, or it was just slowly kind of representing the fact that, oh, she was immediately kind of catching up to him. And like, I don't know. It hasn't really been established. It seems like she's still young, so I don't know. Maybe that was just kind of an after effect, kind of a representation of like their new current situation. I don't know. But she has to learn how to eat. Even using bathroom is like, it's a weird situation for her, because it's like, you know, this is what happens to food. Like, stuff is coming out of my butt. Like, what is this? It's like, right, you've never had to deal with like the boring stuff aspects of life. It's kind of interesting. It's like this kind of our new reality, so we got to kind of get associated with it. So So I thought that was kind of neat. But also like when David and Carrie went in everybody's different minds. You have Potomi's mind, and the whole situation of like, and that's so interesting because like obviously the disease kind of locks you in your own mind and stuff like that. But like everyone's like situation in their own mind being locked away kind of left them in kind of a fantasy state. And like in Potomi's case, it's like, well, basically he'd always forget. As someone with his abilities where he never forgets anything, it was kind of like his escape. It was his fantasy. And then I guess in Melanie's case is the fact is that she could be omnipotent. I guess in this situation, because for Melanie, so much stuff was always out of her control. Like if she was so, like that's what it is. Like she lost so much because everything was out of her control. Like she wanted to feel in control for once. So that's what her whole situation was about. So I love that her situation was also kind of like a text adventure. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. Also, the whole, do remind me, I don't remember what it was. Like we've recently seen that Minotaur thing. Yeah, because it was in Division 3, wasn't it? Or was it? Yeah, because that's where David saw it, right? Like, it was like a Minotaur on, like, doggy wheelchair. So, like, wasn't that it? Because I was trying to remember, because I know it's popped up earlier in the season, but I was like, I couldn't remember, like, what the circumstances were. And I think it was just he saw it roaming around Division 3, or maybe that's just his mind, like, you know, because he has seen the future, so maybe his mind is slow. Because, obviously, and it's not just David, weird stuff pops up, and it's kind of like, okay, what's the purpose of that? Like, the cow first pops up, and it's like, okay, now it's gone. And then the cow pops up again, but everyone else is seeing it. And I love that whole situation. Like, well, what about the cow? He's like, I don't care about the cow. Carrie's like, but I don't want no cow in my lab. He's like, don't touch anything. At first I was like, you're looking for Sid. So obviously the cow must be Sid, which really quickly, I love that thing too about Sid, when she was in the cat. She's like, oh yeah, so tell me about the future me. I'm like, how do I look? Like, tell me what, he's like, am I prettier now or then? David's like, this feels like a trick question. I was like, yeah, that seems like a question you can't win. I'm sure he hasn't gone specifically into details because I'm not forgetting there's the whole like missing arm situation. So, but nevertheless, he did kind of like, I did like that David kind of typed out this, beautiful story of just kind of like dreams. A woman who kind of felt like she didn't have any dream, a girl who didn't have any dreams. She met a boy who did have a dream, but the boy didn't realize that her dream was to be carefree. It was kind of like the moral of the story, essentially what he was telling. And Carrie was like, "Oh, that was beautiful, David, but I don't know if it's going to work." And then David's kind of like, "Oh, should I, should I like give you a hug?" And she's like, "Please, no, just get me out of here." So very interesting developments on that front. Obviously, the monk has saw into David's head just like David saw into his, and now it kind of left him in a stalemate because like he knows what David was trying to do. He's like, you're trying to work with Farouk, which David tries to explain everything. It's like, well, because of the future and what's going to happen then and there. Like I'm gonna take care of Farouk when it's all said and done. It's like, well, I mean, because the fact of the matter is, one timeline he did apparently, like the current timeline, where the future is headed, where everything happens in the future, like he's already killed Farouk, like pretty recently too. So once again, I'm curious like what the circumstances was it just simply like, oh, I need Farouk dead, so I killed him? Which also begs the question, like, how does time work? Can you change things, or everything just an inevitability? Like, I don't know. I'm sure things can be changed. I mean, let's not forget this is also taking place in the X-Men universe, because interesting enough, it came on beforehand. I just happened to notice that was on. I didn't sit down and watch it, but Days of Future Past, I mean, obviously I've seen it, but I just haven't rewatched it recently. I kind of want to go back and rewatch all of the X-Men movies, but no, I kind of like the whole situation with the MCU thing too. But nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting. Like that movie would kind of pop up also. I mean, it's Fox/FX, so it kind of makes it's beside the point. I'm kind of getting way off book here. So the monk kills himself to kind of keep it secret. David has a semi idea of where Farouk's body is. He knows it's in the monastery, but it's like, I don't know where beyond that. So whatever secrets the monk had, he went to his grave with, which is like, and that was something I meant to also talk about too. The fact is that he was able to make other people sick was kind of interesting. Like, because before it was like, well, it seemed like obviously it's like a contamination, but also like, it didn't affect mutants initially, but now it does. So I guess, I mean, it is a disease, so I guess the argument could be it is like a disease, so it mutated. Or if it was more like an ability, Well, maybe, I mean, maybe that's kind of what it was. Kind of this whole, like, once you get something, well, because it was kind of something they brought up in the episode is like the moment you start thinking something, like things can have a physical reaction to you. So maybe when the monk and kind of went a little crazy, that took on the physical form of creating this disease, and now he just naturally emits it, like because his body was like, oh, like my brain, the brain is saying that this is what my body does. It puts people in this condition. So his brain tricked his body into actually exhibiting that physically and pushing that symptom on other people. I don't know. Like I said, the whole thing in the beginning, like I said, that whole structure to this season is such an interesting take. Like there was nothing like that in season 1. The whole like thing of kind of like breaking things down psychologically like that, which kind of feeds more into the nature of the show, sure, but obviously it feeds into the themes of the episode. But it's just kind of interesting that, I mean, I guess it's just like, you know, just another like aesthetic artistic choice they're taking, like when it comes to like representing and telling the story in the way that they are. It's all fascinating in the long run. Last thing we see of the episode is David going inside of Sydney's head, which is definitely going to be interesting. Because there was a part of me that was like, oh, if the monk's dead, doesn't that mean everything's okay? But I guess like, would it even be possible for him to reverse it? I guess it's not. It's like once it happens, it's happened. I guess the only people that can reverse it is David in particular. I don't know. Maybe anyone like even powerful enough psychic. It is interesting though, because he ended up bringing it up to Potomi and Melanie that basically he implanted something in their heads to kind of give them immunity. It's like you still might want to be a little bit away from them, but it's like I kind of did something with your brain, your minds to kind of make it so that you will kind of be immune and won't be affected by the disease this time. What's also interesting is the other Carrie situation. Male Carrie grabs on to Carrie because he sees that she's in the situation herself, like kind of stuck because of this catalyst disease, and he grabs onto her. He's like, because he's trying to like, so like I love all the different awkward ways he's trying to like, he pokes his hand at her chest, and he's trying to like go inside of her, but he can't just because of their I mean, I guess because it's like it's something that's not natural for him. For the other Carrie, it is because she's done it for so long. She's always lived inside of him, but it doesn't work the same way for him. So all we see is him kind of lean up against her, and then he slowly fades away. So maybe that was him kind of getting sucked into her mind in his own way. Maybe that's what it was. Because it's not like the typical thing of just like sliding into each other. Maybe that's just aesthetically how they chose to show it. But like it seems, obviously it's very different than before, like how they normally come together. So I'm curious to see what that's all about too. Like I said, overall, just a great episode, but it's so weird. And it's just like, I'm not 100% sure what everything means. I'm very interested to see like where all this kind of takes us going forward about this whole Farouk getting his body back situation, you know? David still kind of being torn because he also got those messages from Sid in his mind. He kept seeing him. Obviously she was filling out Hurry, and she was kind of being sucked into like some quicksand type of black sand or whatever. And it's like, was that Sid from, it seemed like he was seeing both Sid from the future and present day Sid. Are they both kind of becoming one in his mind, or is his mind acting the way it is because it's kind of getting radio signals from the future too? Like because Sydney kind of was kind of talking about the fact that she shouldn't be able to do that. But now that like David's kind of linked his mind to hers, maybe it becomes impossible to kind of unlink them now in the sense of like she can get in contact with them. Maybe, I don't know. Or, you know, maybe that is her just sending like quick messages because like, oh, she knows maybe something's happening to her into the future. So that lets her know that something's happening to her in the present or something. I don't know. Ultimately, we'll have to wait to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good